Hey everyone, Fix It Scotty here. Do you love mediocre carpentry? Well, hit the subscribe button to see more of that and other interesting projects. In this video, I'm going to show you how to build an outdoor or indoor double rack for your kayak or small boats. Stick around to see how I did it. Do you guys remember this shed? I built this last year and it's all painted up beautifully. If you're interested in learning how to build that shed, click the link in the playlist at the end of the video. But my wife and I recently acquired a couple kayaks, those cheap plastic ones, to take around the many lakes and ponds that are around us. But despite having that shed, I still have no room to store these stupid things. So after a little bit of Google image searching, I found the perfect storage solution, a double rack that I can mount to the back of the shed wall. This picture I found is actually a real product that is for sale on the internet, but the problem is the price. I am way too cheap for that. So I decided to build my own with some common materials in stock at the home improvement store for around $40 to $50 budget. The materials that I chose for my rack are the following. One pressure-treated 2x4 at a 10-foot length, or you could use cedar. A stair railing. This is a 12-foot piece, I believe, that cost me around $13 or $14. It's not pressure treated, but it says it was treated with some kind of anti-rot material, but we'll be putting some polyurethane on it to keep it, from rotting. And then a 42-inch pressure-treated 2x2 deck railing spindle. Although I only have one here in the picture, I ended up having to buy two of these to create all four of the rack supports. So these wood materials cost around $30 in total. And then additional materials that you may need to buy are coated wood screws, wood glue, a 1.5-inch paddle bit, and some polyurethane. I start with cutting the 2x4 into two 5-foot sections, basically just chopping it in half to make the rack backings. Then I set my saw to 45 degrees and I cut just a cosmetic relief on one side, which will be the top of the rack. And here's what the two matching back rails should look like. Next, I cut the stair rail into 31-inch sections to make the 4 rack rails. I cut the first one and then I used it as a template to cut the other 3. Next, I decided on a 15-degree slope for the rack rails. Then I took the backing and from the bottom I measured off 12 inches and then a center line, and then 46 inches and a center line. And again, that's measured from the bottom for where I'm going to put my rack rails. Next, I set up my drill press with a 1.5-inch paddle blade, and I set the table to an angle of 15 degrees. Then to set the height of the table, I made sure that when the drill hit the wood, it was at about a 1/2-inch depth. And then, so that way I could drill about a 1.5-inch deep hole, not quite all the way through at that angle, but that's kind of what I was shooting for. Because of limited space in my little workshop here, I had to reposition the drill press to do the bottom hole and then the top hole. But it all worked out. Next, I attempted to dry fit the rails into the holes and noticed they are slightly too large. So I sanded the sides to chamfer them a little, and then once they fit, I added wood glue, pounded the rail in with a soft hammer, and then drilled and screwed them in from the back. Next, I measured the rail supports. I started with the 45-degree factory cut that was already on the spindle and set it on the backing. And then I set the other end against the side of the railing so I could mark the cut angle. These supports ended up about 14 inches in length total. I proceeded to cut that one out and then made the other 3 using the first one as a pattern. If you recall, my trail rail had like a slot cut out through the entire bottom of it. Now, to compensate for that in the support, we'll have to do an extra step there. But if you ended up getting a railing that had a flat bottom, you can skip this step. For this next step, I'm setting the blade depth on my table saw to about a 1/16 of an inch, or the depth of that stair rail cutout. Then I cut out either side of the support about 1/8 of an inch, and it takes a few passes and moving the fence in and out slightly to do that. But once I've grooved either side of the support end, I'll just clean up that channel with the chisel. This is what it should look like when it's done. Next, we'll add the rail supports. We'll pre-drill holes into the material. We'll find screws that are appropriate to the size that they need to be, and then I'll add some glue, and then we'll go ahead and screw it all together. I should really not work on carpentry projects in the middle of my day when I'm in the middle, going back and forth doing software deployment work. So I drilled this hole, and it was in the wrong place. I should have drilled it here. I probably had two markings. I confused it. So that was stupid. So what I did was, instead of abandoning this board and going buying a new one, I went ahead and just drilled out a hole with my hole saw. I think this is a 1 3/4, which kind of leaves an inside diameter of 1 1/2, which created a plug for me. So I'm going to just glue and pound this plug in, and then I'll just cut off the excess with my pull saw, and then fill it and sand it, and then I'll make my proper hole. Well, here it is plugged. I still need to fill it and sand it a bit, and that should make it disappear somewhat. I did say I was a mediocre carpenter, right? Now that I have my two matching racks, I'm going to install them on the shed wall. I pre-drilled and started a couple decking screws at the top to get them at least hung. Notice I'm not really centered on the wall. There's two reasons for that. First, the seat opening for the kayaks aren't really centered either, and the seat opening is what's going to go kind of in between the two rails. The front of the boats are always a little bit longer. And then the second is I want to hang these on the studs of the shed, so they're mounted about 48 inches apart from each other, but it makes it slightly off center. I managed to find 6 of these heavy-duty SPAC screws. They're 5 inches, and they're incredibly thick and strong and can take a lot of shear strength. And like I said, I found 6 of them, so I'm going to pre-drill 3 holes, one at the top, middle, and bottom of the rack, on each of the racks, and I'm going to go ahead and screw those in. Now that the racks are installed, I tested them for strength, and I noticed that the downward force is mostly carried by that bottom of the support. So I had an idea to add a little more strength to the supports. So I found these 1-inch nickel-plated angle brackets that I already had, and I thought that'll be a good thing to shore up, and give more strength to the bottom of the support. So I put them in my vise and I bent them to about a 135-degree angle, and then I screwed them in. Now, with better planning that you should have, now that you know about this, you can plan them a little bit better than me so that you don't have to add extra screws. Which one looks better? I'm gonna go with this one. Okay, mine's not gonna win any awards for being pretty, but let's see if it's actually functional. Okay, I'm happy with the way it looks and functions, but that's not important. The real question is, how does my wife like it?
Oh my god, oh, that's beautiful.
We are successful. The only thing left to do now is give everything a good final sanding and apply a few coats of polyurethane to those rails to seal them up from the elements. Consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this, and as always, thanks for watching.